Hiya, pals! Welcome to the Mouse Bytes podcast! Here we go!
Hello and welcome to Mouse Bytes, the show all about Disney video games, past and present. This is episode 24, and I'm your host, Jeph, joined today as always by Clay. Clay, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing very well, other than trying to stay warm.
Yeah, it's getting cold, man.
Yeah, getting into this winter time mindset.
Yes, there's snow on the ground here.
Oh wow!
In Wisconsin, so it's a little snowy. It's kind of crazy. Yeah. I was walking my dog out in this woods behind my house yesterday, and there was snow everywhere and whatever. And my dog was like sniffing everything, and I wasn't really paying any attention. All of a sudden, I realized that my dog was sniffing a deer carcass.
Oh,
yeah. But I kind of couldn't tell it was a deer carcass because it was covered in snow.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden I realized it was a dead deer, and it had already been like eaten by a bunch of coyotes, but there was still a head and some ribs left over, so my dog was like trying to get in those ribs, and I was like, "No, dog, no, let's go."
And there's our preview for Bambi.
Yes.
Bambi's mom.
Bambi's mom. We found her.
Oh, man. Yeah, we haven't quite gotten any snow yet here, or even any frost, but it's been down into the near freezing point overnight here, so it's starting to get chilly.
Oh, man.
So, yeah, just trying to survive, but enough about that. Let's
We're gonna talk about some Lion King, right?
Yeah, well, see, it was gonna be the Lion King, and up until very recently, it was gonna be the Lion King. And then we realized that
someone was having a birthday.
Yeah, the week that we're doing this, both kind of recording / releasing, is the 25th anniversary of Disney's Aladdin for the Sega Genesis / Mega Drive.
Yeah, we totally almost screwed that one up. Yeah, so we pulled a lateral last second. We're like, frick, we need to switch it up. So no Lion King this week. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, we went one game earlier, but still just as good in many ways, and we'll dive into that. But without further ado, let's check out Disney's Aladdin. Alrighty, so as always, we'll start with what the heck is this game? So Clay, I'll have you kick us off with that. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so this is a action platformer game based off the movie. There are two different two different Aladdin games that people think of from this generation. This one came out first, and in my opinion is the better version, but we'll get to that. Yes, and so there's two Aladdin games, one on Genesis and a different version that was on the Super Nintendo. Obviously it came out on other consoles, but this is the one it was known for. This one, I guess the big thing that separates them is, obviously who developed them. This one was developed by Virgin Games and not by Capcom, and so the other version is the Capcom version. But we'll be taking a look at that, but not today. And so this is the Genesis version, and it's really straightforward platforming action collectathon type game. So pretty simple. And so it's developed by Virgin Games for the Sega Genesis, Sega Mega Drive. It released November 11th, 1993, which as of recording today is November 10th. So tomorrow, as of recording, will be the, what'd you say, 25?
Yeah.
So pretty cool that we we made this work. Along with the Sega Genesis, it was also released on a number of different consoles, including the Amiga. What is the Amiga? I don't even know what that is.
Oh man.
Do you know off the top of your head?
Not right off the top of my head. I've
I
heard of
legit
it.
don't. Amiga. I'm googling it. Let's
I
see.
can't remember if it was little
it's
PC.
a computer.
Yeah, like a Commodore 64 type thing.
Okay. Yeah, so it was on the Amiga. It was also on DOS, which is another computer thing. There's an NES version.
Really?
Which I played the ROM of it yesterday. I don't know how readily available that game was, because that's not a game you see in the wild. So maybe it was like a Europe thing, or...
Yeah, it's really late in the generation for it to have come
out. And oh man, so that one and the Game Boy one are basically the same game. I played both of them yesterday, and they're both pretty much complete garbage. It's basically a like level by level port, more or less. Like the level layouts are exactly the same, the enemy placement's all the same, but they're just like the NES and Game Boy versions are just, the frame rate is atrocious. And
when you say they're the same, do you mean the same as each other, or they're the same as this one but just dumbed down?
They're definitely the same game, the NES and the Game Boy one, but they are the same as as far as I could tell. I mean, I only played like the first level, but yeah, pretty much the same layout as the Genesis ones, maybe a little
random.
Yeah, and they're atrocious looking, and like his jump is super floaty in them for some reason, so you can like jump way higher than you can in the original game. But
weird.
Anyway, I wouldn't really recommend those. There's also a Game Boy Color version that came out later. That one is a little bit better. It looks better, and probably plays, the frame rate's probably a little bit better, but still not up to snuff. I don't know. They tried hard.
Yeah.
Also not mentioned on here, there's like a Game Gear version. Maybe that's in a different class or something, but I literally have it sitting behind me, so I don't know why it's not listed.
Wasn't listed in this list, huh?
But I have that, and so I think that's all the consoles though. But it's still a lot. The fact that it came to the computer is kind of interesting, I think.
Yeah.
I haven't seen gameplay of that. I'm not sure what it would look like or how it played, but I feel like consoles were ahead of computers at this point, right?
I don't know if I'd say like ahead as far as like technically, but yeah, like in general, like gaming was this type of game, like platformers and stuff were usually on console. I feel like the PC games were more like adventure and point and click and strategy at that point. But I mean, Doom was already out or was coming out right around the same time. So it's hard to say. But in general, I feel like the Disney games on console were usually action adventure platformers, and that the Disney games on PC, maybe not right this time period, but shortly after, were like the interactive CD-ROM storybook, like the 101 Dalmatians and Pooh's Adventure and stuff. But
I don't know.
Like,
I'm not giving it enough credit. I think I'm thinking older. Yeah. I guess I didn't. Yeah, because I'm looking at footage of it right now, and it actually looks pretty on par with the Genesis version.
Okay,
Really, the only big difference is there's a huge like top bar above with all your like your health and all your collectibles and stuff. It's a big black bar. It's kind of obtrusive, but other than that, it looks like doesn't look too bad actually. So I apologize for all those DOS lovers out there. I should have given it more credit.
Hardcore gamers.
We're actually going to be covering some older computer Disney games here eventually. I think we've got one on the list coming up shortly. So we'll have to see if we can figure out how to play those. Anyway, I'm taking too long just to get through the top part here. So I had some additional notes. Jeph, would you like it if I shared some of them?
Yeah, go ahead and touch on those.
And then you could. All right, just some things I found online. There's a lot to read up on this game because it's obviously pretty popular. Disney Aladdin was developed for the Mega Drive originally, so that was like what it was. They set out to make it specifically for. Was published by Sega. This is due to the fact that Sega had both obtained a license for publishing video games based on Disney's motion pictures and established a collaboration deal with Disney's Venture Animation Studio. So Sega of America tasked the Virgin Games USA development team with programming duties because of their successful previous efforts with McDonald's Global Gladiators and 7-Up's Cool Spot.
I played Cool Spot. That was a fun game.
Yeah, I like that one. I don't know if I've ever played McDonald's Global Gladiators.
I've never heard of that one.
I've played some McDonald's games, but I don't know if I've played that one.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But yeah, so it's cool. Basically, I'll just keep reading. Development for the game began in January 1993 with a team of 10 animators working on the animation frames. The work was then shipped to Virgin's California facility to be digitized. Ooh, cool word. The game used traditional animation, which was produced by Disney animators under the supervision of Virgin's animation staff, including animation producer Andy Lucky. Technical directors, animation directors used an in-house Digicel process to compress the data onto the cartridge. I don't know a lot about Digicel. I probably should have tried Googling it and seen if I could find more. I mean, we can kind of assume what it is, but I think I read somewhere else that the Digicel thing was kind of their technology, I don't know.
I'm sure they created it, yeah.
Right. I don't know. It's just interesting because this game was created because they struck up this deal with Disney, to be able to license their games, and use them. But then they also established this collaboration deal where they would have access to Disney animators for their games.
That's so awesome.
I would have been so stoked if I worked there and we figured out that deal.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So,
that's really cool.
And as we'll talk about when we get to the visual part, I think that this whole thing we're talking about right here really played a huge part in why this game is as good looking or awesome or whatever as it is. For those of you who don't know, Aladdin for the Genesis was the third best-selling game for the console, with 4 million physical units sold since its release.
That's impressive.
So, yeah.
Considering, how many Sonic games and other stuff.
Seriously. So this is definitely a staple of the Genesis collection and the games they had. And so Jeph, did you have anything you wanted to share kind of off topic with this game before?
Yeah, just a little bit more about its inspiration and impact on the industry. There was an interview, there's a documentary essentially that Digital Foundry, which is Eurogamer's tech analysis YouTube division, they did an interview with a bunch of former Rare employees, current Playtonic Games employees who had worked on Donkey Kong Country, and one of them, Kev Bayless, an artist, mentioned that the reason, a big reason that Nintendo pushed for Donkey Kong Country and the pre-rendered graphics and all that was because this Aladdin game, this Genesis version, was getting pretty positive press about how good it looked and that it possibly rivaled Super Nintendo games because it had, again, as we'll talk about with the graphics, just really good graphics. And so Donkey Kong Country was essentially a direct answer to that, which was just fascinating in and of itself. But then the lead designer and a lot of the team went on to found Shiny Entertainment the following year, made Earthworm Jim. Yeah. Shiny Entertainment eventually went on to merge with, I think, the Collective to become Double Helix Games, or there may have been a few steps in there, but ultimately they became Double Helix Games, and Double Helix Games created the 2013 version of Killer Instinct, which was Rare's original 3D sprite rendered game that they had started work on just slightly before Donkey Kong Country. So kind of a full circle story there. I don't know that anyone who worked on Aladdin did work on that new version, but there's an interesting lineage back and forth there.
Yeah.
With that. So I just thought that was interesting.
That is really interesting. And I guess we didn't really mention, but Virgin Interactive obviously went on to make other Disney games.
Yeah.
Obviously, because they had this deal going. Some of them being, obviously, they did The Jungle Book. They did The Lion King, which was the other big, I think, Genesis hit with the Disney name. I'm trying to think what other Disney games I should have written.
They do
some
the
more
Pinocchio
down.
one, or was
yes,
that someone else?
Yep,
I feel like that
that's
was
here. You're right. They did that as well, which we talked about the animation on that one being really good. So
Graphics
that makes sense.
Were great. Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense that they would have done that. and there might have been a couple more, but off the top of my head, those are some of the ones they did. But I don't know, just their work based on what they had, the relationship they had with Disney just made them kind of untouchable. So it definitely helped them put it in their corner. So
Definitely.
But then I guess it was interesting because eventually they didn't just stick to Genesis or Sega, because when they went to Lion King, obviously they developed it for both consoles. So they weren't necessarily I don't know, I guess you call it first party. They weren't
right, or second party, because it was Sega publishing. Yeah.
Right. But for this one, it seemed like and so I'm not sure what the story is with like Nintendo doing a Capcom version and Disney licensing that out. I'm not really sure how that all played out or how that works. Maybe we'll find out when we cover that one. But we figured it was best to keep them separate. So rather than smash them, put them both in here. So
yeah. Alrighty, well, with that, let's keep moving forward. Do you have any history with this game or any nostalgia with it?
Oh my gosh, so much. It's unreal. I probably made this show with you, Jeph, to cover this game and Lion King. Aladdin, Lion King, and Mickey's Magical whatever. Those three games are probably like the pinnacle Disney video games in my life, I guess.
Yeah.
And they're obviously some of the most popular ones. But so I never had a Sega Genesis at my house when I was a kid. I was a Nintendo kid. But for whatever reason, my grandma had a Sega Genesis at her house. And so when we would go over there, which was a lot, we would play the Sega, and we didn't really care. We weren't like loyalists to Nintendo. We'd play whatever was, available. And so she had a Genesis, and she had Aladdin, she had Lion King, and some other games. And so really, every time we were there, these were the games that we were playing. And so, oh my gosh, just so much nostalgia for these games. And even though I can guarantee I never beat either of them, or probably even got too far in them, we still played the crap out of them. And it's funny to think, even after playing them for as long as we did, that we never got better or figured it out. I think we did eventually learn the level skip cheat, and so we probably used that to play a little bit of every level, but I'm not sure that I've ever beat every level until now or whatever. Who am I kidding? I level skipped this week too playing this, but just once. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of my history with it. Was we played it a lot then, and it's just always been a game that even growing up is still super important to me. I have a copy of it. It's been sitting on my shelf ever since I started buying my own Genesis games, and I've got 3 Genesis consoles for some reason. I don't know why. I got some of them in box, and they're really cheap. Anyway, I think I even own I own a copy of Aladdin for probably almost every console.
Nice.
I've got the Game Gear game in box back there, and so I don't know. It's just I like it. They made so many copies of it. It's easy to find. It's not expensive, and so it didn't take me very long to get a copy. And so it's just always been a game that is just even hearing the music and just seeing level 1 just really takes me back. And so just good memories all around.
That's awesome. For myself, unfortunately, it's yet another one that I didn't grow up with. However, more so than most of the other games, with the exception of maybe the Lion King, I was very aware of this one, and I really wanted to get it and play it. I think I played it at a store kiosk around the time it came out. But yeah, I never owned it, and I never got it later on. I played it on emulators plenty of times. Quite a bit, actually, but again, like you, I didn't really ever get that far or feel like I got any better at it. This week is the first time I ever got past the 3rd level, and I also had to use level skip because it gets tough as nails. This is a blockbuster, brutal game for sure.
Yep.
And this team behind this game is pretty notorious for almost inventing that, especially with Lion King.
Yep.
That same interview that you were talking about earlier, they discussed that. So, I sad to say that I missed out on it originally, but at the time I had a subscription to Disney Adventure magazine, and pretty sure they covered it pretty in depth, and I was like really stoked to learn more about it and see it and all that good stuff. So sadly, no history with it, but the nostalgia is pretty strong for it, just because it was a milestone in the video games industry. It was a good movie tie-in. It was, got a lot of praise and critical acclaim and all that good stuff, and it was sort of, Disney had success on the NES prior to this with some of the Disney Afternoon games and things like that, but I felt like this was a chance for Disney to really move into gaming and kind of dominate that industry, and as we all know, that didn't really happen, but at the time for me it was like, oh my goodness, they're tackling this, and it was around that time that I kind of thought that I wanted to be a video game developer. So
nice.
Yeah, so all based around that time period and this game and The Lion King. So right there with you on the love for those.
Awesome.
But yeah, that's pretty much it. So with that, we've talked enough about the game and how it was made and all that, but we'll jump now into our gameplay discussion. And with the gameplay discussion, as always, we will discuss the visuals, the audio, the gameplay / difficulty, the story, and then just kind of discuss each level a little bit. So first, the gameplay. This game is pretty good. It's got really tight controls. I like how it handles. I like the gameplay elements as far as like things you can climb, kind of do the monkey bar thing. You got a sword and you can throw apples, and it's a well-rounded package. It's not overly complicated, but not too simplistic.
Definitely. I mean, even just having 3 button, actions that you can do, jump, sword, and throw apples. Like, I don't know. Sometimes that's even more than what a lot of games would give you. But
right, exactly.
But yeah, I think it worked real well for the Genesis controller, I guess. And I just needed to have like, I remap things sometimes and try to, I don't know, and it's cool that they allow you to do that. So it's like, where do you put the jump? I like that. So
yeah. Same here. It was interesting for me not having a hard copy of the game. I did use emulation, but not growing up with the Genesis, I'm not familiar with that controller, and I don't have any like muscle memory for it. And so when I was mapping the buttons, I was like, oh, I don't even know what I should map to where on an Xbox controller. And so I ended up just kind of doing A to jump, X to swing my sword, and Y to throw the apples, and that worked out. But again, like you said, I could do that in-game. I didn't have to remap the controller after I picked the button layout. So anyway,
visuals.
I was going to say there's a few variations of gameplay. There's like a magic carpet section where it's just sort of a up-down, avoid obstacles thing. A little cheap in that Genie will point up or down to tell you to avoid a rock, but then every once in a while he does like a question mark, or he'll do it a little late, and and when I say Genie, it's literally just a finger on the right side of the screen that's pointing.
Right.
Is there any other? There's some mini games with the Boo. Where you get to kind of dodge obstacles, and they give him a sword. So there's that. Is there any other gameplay variants in there? Some boss battles and
I
stuff
think
like
I think that's about it.
Okay. Yeah. But the main thing that we wanted to discuss here is the visuals.
Ah, yes.
So, yeah, the visuals for this game are probably the best of the Genesis, in my opinion. The animation in and of itself is spectacular. It's very, very smooth, and what I think is more impressive going back to gameplay is that the animation is super smooth, but it doesn't get in the way of the gameplay. And that's such a hard balance to get right. And I've seen plenty of games, even modern games, even like Red Dead Redemption 2 just came out this week, and sometimes the animations get in the way of the gameplay because, especially when you're trying to do small movements, the animation has to finish before, you can turn, or you can't turn on a dime, and it gets in the way. This game, I feel like, had a perfect ability to let you cut off an animation and transition without it looking too jerky and jolty or whatever. So huge props for the animation. You want to talk a little bit about anything otherwise, visuals, backgrounds?
Oh yeah, absolutely, dude. I'm just gonna have to go up front and be like, I already mentioned it, but I have like super nostalgia glasses on for this one. I don't really know the Capcom version that well, and I know a lot of people like to argue over which is better. But I don't know. I don't really think it's even fair to compare the two because they're two completely different games. It's not like Capcom, ported their version and changed some stuff.
Right.
This is literally like a
two
completely
separate
different
teams doing two separate things without talking to each other very much.
Right. And so I think this is the better game, I guess, if you have to compare them.
I agree 100%. Yeah.
But I've like barely played the Capcom one. And it's weird because I love Capcom Disney games. Like their Mickey games are like some of my favorites. So it's just really weird that I would side with this one. But like I said, I haven't really given the Capcom one a fair shake.
Yeah.
But I think that they're probably better in their own ways. And so I'm excited.
Played both equally, and I would say I like the Genesis one better. So I think I'm totally valid in that opinion.
Okay. But everything I'm going to say here is probably just heightened by the memories I have, the nostalgia.
Sure.
But visually, this game, holy crap, it's so good.
There's so much packed into it.
So much attention to detail and small details. Things like throwing apples at daggers in the air. The daggers cut the apples in half. Yeah. Like just stuff like that. They did not need to do that, but they did it, and it just, I don't know. It really added something. They also had a lot of fun visually with, like Easter egg kind of things where little subtle hints and things like that. There's like Mickey ears throughout the game. There's a Goofy pillar at one point where you see Goofy's face.
Sebastian's in the dungeon.
Which I literally had never noticed that or heard about that until I played through it this week. And I was like, holy crap, that's Sebastian. I did not know about that. I thought that was funny. Other than that, other visual things, there are cutscenes in between the levels. Those are probably not as great, I guess. It's a lot of like talking heads with dialogue written out or whatever. So maybe not the best on those parts, but as a kid, you usually just skip that crap anyways. I think until I played it this time, I've never actually like sat and read through what they present as the story in this game. But I'm trying to think other than that. Obviously, the character models are on point. Even just, holding still for a second, your character already kind of has like a pause animation. And then if you let them stand there even longer, they have more idle animations. And I don't know. It's just, they definitely put a lot of detail into it. I'm trying to think. I had more thoughts when I was playing through it, and I kept thinking, man, I should be writing this stuff down. But I was also recording and didn't want to.
Yeah, I've got a few more on the backgrounds.
Let's hear it, dude.
There's certain levels, and especially like the Magic Carpet and some other ones where there's background parallax scrolling, where there's like different layers of the background moving at different speeds, which we talked a little bit about this with Pinocchio, that the Super Nintendo had it and the Sega Genesis version didn't, but in this game it does have a lot of it, and it's notable especially because the Genesis did not really natively support that, is my understanding. You can only have one scrolling background or something, or two maybe, but essentially by doing a really, I can never remember what's high level and low level, but really complex coding where you just basically go scan line by scan line on the TV, and knowing the refresh rate of the TV, you can update and fake that kind of thing. Donkey Kong Country actually did do that because it did more parallaxing than the Super Nintendo allowed. But it was a really involved technique, really advanced, and took a lot of man hours, but produced a really good result. And so it was really impressive to see that in multiple levels. The desert levels got some cool background dunes and other stuff like that. The color palette is spot on, I think, with the movie, that's going from like the marketplace to the dungeon, and they swap out kind of a cooler palette when you're not in the light in the dungeon. So like the apples are a little more purple, and Aladdin's kind of got a dark blue hue. which looks great because it kind of makes him look like he's in the environment rather than just kind of putting the regular sprite or whatever over a new background. So not that was a super difficult thing, because that's just a matter of remapping the palette, which, the Genesis was pretty limited on the number of colors it could display at any time anyway. So I don't know that palette swapping was hard, but it's a nice touch, and it's an extra attention to detail that not every game did. That's pretty much the gist of the smoke animations, things like that just look great. Definitely.
In the dungeon level, you have those pieces of wall that kind of go in and out. Those look really cool, kind of like a 3D effect. And then in the later levels, there's these I don't even know what they're called. big balls that swing back and forth. And they kind of go into the background and then back into the foreground. I don't know, stuff like that. Just it almost stands out because it looks so good and almost 3D. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Another interesting thing was the rolling boulders in the escape from the Cave of Wonders. Those looked like pre-rendered 3D things, and however they were done doesn't really matter, but the fact that they rolled and looked realistic was again impressive, because I don't think the Genesis supported sprite rotation, so it would have had to be animation frames for it to work, which is impressive.
Right.
So there's just a lot of stuff, and that's it was a big sprite too. It was 4 sprites in one. So a lot of technical effects and a lot of really good technical visual achievement with this game on top of the amazing art. So
the screen is a little busy. There are quite a few collectibles in this game, but the health meter thing, it's cool that it's smoke
of the lamp.
But
give you a count of hit points, and so
right, so it's a little vague. And then there's a point meter at the top, which, why do we even care about points at this point? At this time,
the arcade.
So, and then you got your health and your collectibles at the bottom or whatever. I don't know. I think they could have probably done a better job of explaining the health and maybe gotten rid of the points. I would have liked it better. I don't know. Just any kind of clear visual of how many hit points you have would be nice. But
one thing I did appreciate is it's not even a loading screen, it's really just an informational screen, because you can skip over all of those, but pretty much the first one that pops up shows you every icon in the game and every collectible, and it's like, get these, spend these, do these, and I'm sure most of how to spend the jewels and stuff like that is explained in the user manual, but in game it doesn't really say that you need to seek out the wanderer from the opening of the movie, the narrator. And that's nice, because most of the time we complain that something's not communicated, but it's probably in the manual. Right. And so this is what we've been asking for. For the most part, this explains the bulk of everything you need to know, and definitely the essentials. So
right.
Yeah. But I would agree the UI is a little busy, and again, because it's a lower resolution game, they're bigger icons so that they can be read on an old TV. So it's understandable, but it is, like you said, is a little busy.
Right. So I think for the most part we're usually pretty positive about a game's visuals on this show, but I just want to make it clear that these are I think way better than everything else we've probably talked about.
I would agree as far as comparing them to whatever they were up against at the time.
Unless you go play the Game Boy version, then that all goes out the door real fast. But I feel like that's half the appeal, though, and as soon as you get rid of those visuals, you have, I don't know, not that the gameplay isn't bad, but I feel like without the visuals you lose some of what this game is known for, I guess.
I think that's fair to say.
Some of its charm.
It's a tight game, but it definitely is boosted by its graphics.
I agree.
Anything else graphically, visually?
I'm sure I'm forgetting something.
We'll probably remember and touch back on it. But totally. With that, to kind of complement the really good graphics is the audio. And for me, not having the nostalgia of it and kind of just playing it a little bit. I really like the audio. I just have personally never been a fan of the sound chip on the Genesis. It just always sounds a little too harsh. I don't know if that's the best way to put it, but like that's the only way I can really think of. It's just the samples that come out of it. It's like a Yamaha MIDI chip or something. Were never my favorite, and that goes, good music, even with like Sonic the Hedgehog, still to me is not as good as it could have been had it been done on different hardware. But that comes down to personal preference and choice. It's just limited, limited audio. But the compositions I think in this game are amazing, and there's a great mix of, and this again is something we bring up a lot, but this time there is a great mix of both original movie music and original compositions. So
Definitely.
I thought that was awesome that they did that.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what we always ask for in these games. So
it's true.
Like they did it. Don't know why nobody else did it.
Yeah, right.
Capcom
Finally.
was stubborn. I think it's like, well, we're employing a composer. We should probably make him compose.
Right.
Or he's just stubborn. It's like, well, this is someone else's music. I don't want to touch it. Who knows?
Yep. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the audio? Sounds like you like it a lot more.
I do, and I think a lot of it is just nostalgia. Like, I think if I heard this on a SNES, I mean, The Lion King's a perfect example.
It is.
I hear the Super Nintendo version of The Lion King's music, and it's not the same to me, and it just doesn't. I don't feel like it's as good, but I think it's just because this is what I'm used to. Yeah. This is what I grew up. So hearing it a different way is just weird.
Yeah.
But I will say, as a guy who owned a Super Nintendo and never had his own Genesis, I think sometimes the Genesis works better than the sound chips on the Super Nintendo, but not always.
Okay.
I think it's a case by case basis thing. I get what you're saying, like I get where you're coming from, because they're definitely different. And I can hear. You can play me any random song, and I can pretty much tell you which. If it came out, which chipset it is. Yeah. And not that that's like a huge brag. I'm sure a lot of people can tell the difference.
Standard, but still.
But regardless, I still think this works really well.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. When we get to Lion King, I think there's some pros and cons to both versions.
Yeah.
Like I think the Super Nintendo version has like vocal stuff, but then the Genesis can't really do vocal stuff. I don't know, the terminology not there, but
it might be the other way around, but
no, because it's the opening to the Lion King on the Super Nintendo has that.
I see
but the Sega one doesn't do that.
And you mean musically? I was thinking like voice clips, like
no,
it stops. No, and that is because of how the MIDI's. You can load your own MIDI sound clips.
Right.
That's probably why that worked.
Okay. So there's things like that I think give it one the edge over another, but I don't know. I still think the Genesis sound chip on this one works good. So I disagree with Jeph, but that's okay.
That's quite all right. Either way, the music's really good.
I agree with you 100% though that they did a great mixture of original and then stuff from the movie to the point that you don't even notice that what you're listening to wasn't even in the movie.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, like, it all kind of flows pretty well. The desert music from the second level maybe stands out a little bit.
Yeah, I had that thought too.
But it's not a bad song or like annoying, but it feels a little out of place, but not terribly. Yeah. And then my only other thought was, this was kind of weird. On one of the levels, the first level, they use the music from Prince Ali.
Yeah, I was going to bring this up. Yep.
And maybe I'm jumping ahead here.
No, you're not. I wanted to talk about it now, too.
Okay. But then when you get to Agrabah Rooftops later on, a different level, same setting basically, they do the music to One Jump Ahead. And so I don't know why they did that.
It's very odd.
I don't know if they just thought the Prince Ali music was like way more catchy or identifiable, so they put that on the first level to make a good impression. I'm not sure. I thought that was interesting.
It really doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and I was trying to think through it the same way. Like, the movie's first song is One Jump. The first level is based on the market, which is from the I guess the second song because the opening credits have a song, but
Right.
the first like one with Aladdin is one jump. So like yeah, it was weird to have a level literally based on one jump, all the way down to like walking across the fire and all that stuff from the movie, and then using the Prince Ali song, which I get like maybe there wasn't a better place to use it, but maybe switch them, maybe start with one jump and then do Prince Ali
Yep.
later. Like
Definitely.
I just don't quite understand the idea and the thought process there, but it is what it is, and it's not the end of the world. It was just kind of like, wait, this is Aladdin music, but this isn't what's playing at this part of the movie.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah. Beyond the music, the sound design is really good as well. There's voice samples. There's metallic clanks. Like if your sword hits someone else's sword, it makes a different sound. And I mean, there's really great sound design here. There wasn't ever any sound effects that got annoying to me, like in most of the other games we've played from this.
There's
era.
no jump sound. You silently jump like a normal person.
And just very light, like an impact sound if you fall from more than a certain height. And there's
Yeah.
a cloud of dust. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, exactly. It's refreshing.
Yeah.
Because even the Mario games, which do fine, they have jump sounds, but those never got obnoxious. But
Right.
I think those are the reason that most of their games had jump sounds, is because like, oh, Mario makes a sound. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Very few did it as well. Sonic, maybe the one exception, did it just as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, no jump sound. That's great. The rest of the sound design, I can't really place any faults on it. Like I'm sure there's probably a couple of things like the voice samples are compressed, but they're not awful.
Right. I think my only issue with the voicing is it just doesn't sound like Aladdin. He's like, wow.
Okay, yeah.
Whereas in the Capcom one, I think it has a little more. It sounds a little more like the actual voice actor. I don't know if it is him,
Can't
but it's got like
what it sounds like in that one. I'll have to play
Yeah,
it.
I just turned it on last night and I noticed that, and I was like,
Okay.
okay. But
Huh.
if I hadn't compared, I mean, it's a really small thing.
Sure.
But
yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah.
I think everything else, sound effect wise, is A+. So
Alrighty, and okay, I just realized that I skipped around because I did gameplay
You did.
first. Yeah,
it's okay.
so we did start with gameplay difficulty, which is normally what we would do after visuals and audio, but
Let's talk about
regardless,
difficulty.
Yeah, we can go into that. So a phrase that Clay coined kind of early on in this show is this thing called blockbuster brutal, and it's essentially a trick that developers at this time, and really it was like this development team specifically, implemented to help fight game rentals. And so they would make like the first level easy and manageable, and you'd think, okay, I really like this, pretty much give you a full sample of the game and how great it could be. But then like the second or third level, and maybe not in this game in particular, definitely the third level by the time you're in the dungeon or whatever, or the fourth level, it starts getting really, really hard with just really complex jump timings, and enemies are a little more aggressive and more projectiles and stuff like that. And so this game, like the first three levels were not terribly difficult for me, and maybe it was partially with the invincibility for the third level. But long story short, the difficulty ramps up really severely starting at like the fourth level.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And that was, again, to make people essentially not be able to beat it when they rent it, so they would have to go buy it, because if they rented it multiple times, it'd be a waste of money. This is all the thought process by the marketing people, and it's true.
Yeah.
But it made these games from this era excruciatingly hard for what you would consider to be a kid's game.
Yeah, especially the later levels, like I don't even know how you would do it. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm man enough to admit that I played with the invincibility cheat on just because I wanted to enjoy the game and not get frustrated with how difficult it is.
Yep.
And I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. And I plan to play Lion King the same way.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, even with infinite lives and invincibility, some of the later levels, the one I had the most trouble with actually was where you're trying to escape the Cave of Wonders before you get on the carpet.
Yeah, after you touch the lamp.
And you're like being chased by the boulders and stuff. Holy cow, I could not beat that. That was the one I eventually just gave up and used, because there's no, in that level, there's purposely no checkpoint
thing, yeah.
And so I think they just wanted to feel like you make them run in one full run, I guess. But holy cow, man, it was tough. And
So
then
hard.
And then the carpet part is really hard too. And
Mm-hmm.
but what I noticed is I probably died 5 or 6 times on it, and then eventually it said nice try, and it kicked me to the next level.
Oh, I gave up before that. The carpet,
See,
I gave it 2 tries, and I was like, nope.
Yeah, so I guess there's that one for some reason. There's a set amount of times, and then it skips the level for you, which I did think that was interesting. And I was on normal difficulty, so
okay.
I'm not sure. But yes, this game does have a practice mode, a normal, and a hard mode.
Mm-hmm.
I could not imagine beating this game on hard.
No.
I'm not entirely sure what makes it hard, if it's just
I'm not either.
life count or what. But I don't know. I feel like there should have been just one difficulty on this. I assume the practice mode probably doesn't give you the full game. It probably
we ran into that before.
Right. It's probably exactly like that. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think you said it all. It's definitely not an easy game, but at first it seems like it's going to be like, oh, this is a real this is going to be a moderately challenging game, but I don't know. I guess I don't want it to be super easy. Obviously, you want there to be some challenge, but they probably took it a little far. It's not as bad as Lion King, but it gets up there.
Yeah,
especially when you get the enemy that I hate most in all video games, which is bats.
Yeah.
As soon as bats show up, you can just tell that you're gonna have a bad time. So
it's true. No, my first real difficulty, my first real struggle was when you're in the Sultan's dungeon or whatever, and those rocks you were talking about earlier, the stones that kind of come in and out of the wall. They're, it's a matter of, and this is something that I remember being in like Crash Bandicoot, and just it was popular at this time just to have these, like. And actually some of the other Mickey games had them. So basically a timing thing where it's like your platform you're standing on is going to disappear right as the next one appears, essentially is what it is. And it's just timing. And if you screw up on that, you fall like really far, and it's that you have to wait for the cycle to reset. And it's time intensive because of the it's on a timer, kind of an this one goes in while this one goes in or out. So that was my first struggle, and that in general, like that whole area had, I think that's where the bats first started too.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
Yeah. And it was a much more of a labyrinth and hard to see. Just the way the stuff hangs down in the foreground. It's like, can I pass through this wall or can I not? And can I jump on this platform or can I not?
Right.
A little bit of that, not too much. Or like there's chains that you can climb, but there's chains that are kind of just background, foreground decoration. So a little bit of trickery with that. And then like sometimes we're in a chain, there's the juggling dagger guy who throws stuff at you, and it just gets tough. So
yeah, it's definitely a game you have to like it takes practice, repetition, just playing it over and over until, because like I didn't really struggle with the platforms that you were talking about this playthrough, but I think it's because I've played it enough that
you've got the timing.
But I totally can, and I'm never really a fan of, let's play a level where you have to climb up really high, but then if you screw up, you fall all the way back down, and then you got to like work your way back up. Right. Never been like a huge fan of those kinds of levels. So,
and I don't mind them if they're static, but it's like when you have to wait for an animation cycle, it just it adds so much frustration to me.
Totally. Yeah, I don't know. As far as gameplay for this goes, there's a lot to do. They've jam-packed a lot in here. There's a nice little easy mini game if you collect genie heads throughout the level. There's like a roulette, or I guess I don't know if
Mario
that's the right
Bros.
word.
2, like a slot machine.
Slot machine kind of thing. And then there's, if you collect Abu's head, they have the Abu mini games, which are really challenging. But I don't know. It's just the gameplay doesn't have a lot of breakup in it, but those two things right there just kind of add a little something extra. So it always felt like there was just a lot to do in this game and a lot of things to find. Most collectibles were for good reason. One's a currency, and one you literally use as a weapon. And so it's a little overwhelming when you see that first screen with all the things you can collect, but it's nice that each one of those things actually serves a purpose. Right. And so, I don't know. I thought that was pretty cool. There's a lot to this game. There's a lot you can do. I mean, there's a ton of Abu collectibles. I don't even know where they are. I've maybe found a couple of them, but there's a lot of levels where I'll go through the whole thing and be like, I have no idea where that Abu collectible is. And so there's a lot of replayability on this, I would say, just on that end. So
Yeah, totally agree. Alrighty, I think we've pretty much covered gameplay and difficulty and everything at this point. We'll briefly just maybe touch on the story and the levels together, just because it follows the movie pretty closely.
Yeah, I mean,
unless you want to kind of...
I guess I just have one thing to say about the story. It kind of follows the movie, but also kind of doesn't. They took some liberties.
Yeah.
Like the... What's the little bug gold things that you...
Is it a scarab?
Yes, the golden scarab. You have to like go find them.
Yeah, and there's like multiple of them in the desert. And that's...
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's multiple. I think it's the same one, but then it runs away from you.
Okay.
I was confused by that too. I was like, how many of these are there?
Yeah.
But yeah, you have to like get one in the desert, and then you have to go back to the marketplace and fight that little... Yeah, the little guy who's apparently not dead, because doesn't he die at the beginning?
Yeah, he literally gets eaten by the Cave of Wonders at the very beginning,
right,
before the story even starts.
So they negated that whole thing. So it's just it's little stuff like that where just kind of they like for whatever reason were struggling to set up the story, but then once it got going, it pretty much played out the way the movie did. But the front was a little like I don't know why they had to do it that way. I don't know if it just was based on what levels they were able to do. They're like, we just got to tweak some of this stuff. And then I did notice the front half of the story plays out pretty long, like it, but then all of a sudden the end of the movie in the game plays out really fast.
Yeah.
I mean, you go from riding the rug out of the Cave of Wonders, and then you've got like 3 levels left and it's over. So I don't know. It's heavy on the front end of the story, and then kind of just plays really fast.
To me, that sounds like a timing issue with development. They just we need to get this out.
Maybe. Yeah, you might be right. I think even the way that like Jafar gets the lamp isn't like how it is in the movie. All of a sudden he's just like, he dropped this when he was doing this, and now I have it. Oh, and another huge thing, Aladdin goes inside of the lamp, which I don't remember.
That I thought was weird, because it's like essentially the same thing as Friend Like Me, which was just inside the Cave of Wonders. So like, why did it need to be inside the lamp? It could have been equally as surreal. Like the genie was doing his magic, and that entire musical sequence is crazy anyway. Yeah, that was odd. What I did like about that level in particular was just the visuals of a lot of stuff.
There.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, you're right, but we'll get to it.
Yeah. Just hold that thought. We'll come back to it, because you're right. There is some cool visual stuff in that level. I don't know. That's all I wanted to say about the story. Is it's not a very accurate representation of the movie, but it's close enough. You know, I think they did an okay job. You know, trying to keep it faithful, and so
fair enough. And that's right. I kind of didn't really put enough thought into that, but you're absolutely right.
Well, most people skip it. Like I totally would skip it too. Like if I wasn't like reviewing it for the show, I probably would have just blazed right past it like I used to. But it wasn't until I like stopped and started reading some of the stuff. I'm like, why is Jafar disguised as an old guy like still around after like 4 levels? I'm like, that charade lasted for like 10 minutes in the movie, maybe. Right. I don't know, stuff like that where I thought it was weird. And then inside the lamp, I was like, that's kind of weird. They retconned some things to be like, then Aladdin got inside Genie's lamp to not die. I think it was like to not be killed by something. I can't remember what it was. Okay. Oh, that's how they got out of the Cave of Wonders. It like disappeared, but in order for him to not die, he went inside the Genie's lamp.
Oh, weird.
Instead of escaping. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. Just weird. Kind of weird.
Yeah.
But we can go through the levels if you want.
Yeah, let's just real quick touch on them. I don't think we need to go like super in depth with them. But
no.
Yeah. So, go ahead and start us out.
Yeah. So obviously the first level is the one that everybody knows the best. Is the Agrabah Market. Aladdin fights all these palace guards. And it's a relatively straightforward level. It kind of it shows you real quickly that there's multiple areas you can visit. There's a lot of like little hidden areas you can go to underneath stairs and things like that. They do a good job of showing you things that you can collect, but you have to like go around to get to it.
Yeah, and then backtrack or drop down. Yeah.
Right. And so I think they like purposely would show you like, oh, there's a jewel over there, but there's a wall in the way. Go find it. And so I don't know. Other than that, it's a relatively straightforward level. It's a good introductory level, I would say.
Agreed.
Following that is the desert level. This one is actually probably the most unique, if not just the most, I don't know, bizarre and kind of fun level. There's a ton of Easter eggs and hidden things in this level. I mean, for instance, when you first start the level, if you go to your left, when you first start out, there's like some apples. But then if you go back to the right, past the first tree, and then go back again to the beginning of the level, there's an extra life just sitting there. It like appears after you go so far. Just like random things like that, where it's just like they really did some fun things. And then later on in the level, there's a like a clothes line.
Yeah.
And there's some Mickey ears on it. And I remember as a kid, I would always like go stand underneath the Mickey ears because they put them at like the perfect level to where Aladdin can like, it looks like he's wearing them. But come to find out, they're actually, you can get an extra life for doing this. I just never was doing it as like, it's a very
it has to do with the idle animation. Yeah.
Right. And I wasn't, and I don't think I was waiting for the idle animation to kind of like to position it because he kind of moves forward a little bit in it. Leans. And so it took me like 3 minutes because I read about it and I was like, I gotta figure this out.
I did it today. Yeah.
Because I thought it was a myth. I thought maybe I was like, maybe somebody just made that up. But nope, it's real. An extra life pops out if you do it right. Just really cool stuff that it's just like just extra little details. Obviously there's a pillar in this one that has Goofy's face on it, and if you stand behind that pillar and jump, you do this like crazy I don't know what it is, but like you basically like do a super jump and you go flying up in the air, and then it reveals one of those like marketplaces where you can buy items.
Oh, cool.
Which
that one.
I didn't know that either until I read it and tried it, and was like, yep, it works.
Nice.
Speaking of the market, there's two things you can buy there. There's extra lives, and there's a thing called One Wish. Is a wish, that's an extra continue, right?
I don't know. I was actually going to ask you the same thing.
I think it is, because I think when you run out of lives, you can continue, and like you like
that would make sense.
You like kind of come back.
And it does cost more, so.
Right, they're like
10 instead of
10
5 or whatever.
10 instead of 5. Yeah. And so anyway, I answered my question just asking it to you for some reason,
that
but
works.
I finally remembered. So I don't know. The desert level is just really cool. There's one part where there's like changing tents, like to change into your swimsuit, and there's a man, a woman tent, and then there's a genie tent. I don't know, it's just really goofy, fun
Silly,
stuff.
tongue-in-cheek,
you can just tell they're having fun with it. Even though it doesn't fully make sense, like why.
I think it's maybe for the Oasis, like for people to go swimming at the Oasis, but I don't know.
But what does the genie have to do with any of it? Because he's in the Cave of Wonders
at this point. Below
the, it doesn't fully make sense, but it doesn't really matter, I guess.
Right.
So.
I mean, at this point, you're already collecting genie heads and spinning the little genie vases, so I don't know. You're right. It does not make sense as far as what's happening.
But I guess it doesn't matter. They're just having fun. Following that is Agrabah Rooftops, which is basically the market once again.
This time with better music.
Yes, with the proper music. This one introduced some cool characters because there's like these ropes that come out of pots. Kind of like a snake would, like a snake charmer, and you ride those, and they take you to different areas. And then you're collecting these flutes, which I guess
like are what oboe, something like that.
I think they're the things that activate the.
Yeah, so if you collect one, it makes a rope come out of one of the pots, and so then it will take you to a next level that's higher up. That might take you to another.
Right.
Oboe thingy,
it's not
an interesting
an
mechanic. It's not really well explained, so if you don't figure that out, then you get stuck for a while.
Yeah, and so you're chasing down the other piece of the scarab, which then, as I mentioned earlier, you run into Gazim, and you fight him in kind of a boss. But then directly following that, you get a second boss.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they should have spread these bosses out, but they literally have one right after the other.
Should have put one in the first level and one at this level.
Yes.
I don't know.
And,
I agree.
What's the head guard's name? Do you remember?
I don't remember. I don't know that they give that name until the second or third movie or the TV
right.
show.
It's definitely not. I don't think it's in the first movie.
No.
But Mr. Disney Trivia doesn't know the name of the guy.
Oof. I'm not a fan of straight-to-video sequels.
How dare you?
I know.
Aladdin is in a different
It
ball
was
field.
the first one, and its sequels were much better than in most of the later ones, I will agree. But I've only seen them all, or I've only seen each of them once.
Wow, only once?
Yeah.
I watched the crap out of those when I was a kid, even though they weren't as good, even though the second one didn't have Robin Williams in it. I still watched it. Yeah, Homer Simpson, baby.
I watched it, but I may have seen it like 2 or 3 times back then, but I definitely have not watched it since I was like 10.
Yeah. Yeah, so I just thought it was weird. Like, they could have easily put, I don't know, put those bosses in different levels, because there's literally another level with, I don't know, maybe they just thought it was too hard. His name is Razul.
Oh, okay.
Razoul.
There we have it.
Voiced by Mr. Jim Cummings.
Absolutely.
Not in this game, but
No.
in the movie. So that's pretty much it. For that level, pretty straightforward. Next is Sultan's Dungeon. Jeph, do you want to talk about that?
Sure, yeah. So in the Sultan's Dungeon, basically, as we talked about, you're navigating a maze of the dungeon, but Aladdin fights his way out of the prison. The music in that one is Arabian Nights, which again is another example of them just sort of rearranging. I'm glad they got it to work, and the color palette is kind of dark, like it's nighttime, like in the movie.
Yeah.
So it at least does sort of make some sense.
It's just funny that it was like this setting was like in the movie for, I don't know,
like
maybe a minute, and then they stretched it out. Like, we could make a whole level out of this, but I mean, pretty much every platformer game has a spooky dungeon castle level, so I mean, it fits into the platformer trope, I would say. So.
Yeah, it totally works.
Also, how about those skeleton bad guys that replace their heads with bombs?
Awesome. Yeah, they spawn with a bomb on their head, holding their skull in their hand, and they like take it off with the other hand and put the head on, and then throw it. Like, that's awesome.
And then they blow up, and their skeleton bounces everywhere and tries to hit you.
Yeah.
Just like, what a wacky enemy choice.
Right.
It's right up there with
out of
it's right up there with the
movie.
Yeah, the snake with the fez hat from the desert level. Just like just something I like randomly came up with, but I appreciate that. At least it's not just Sultan's guards like the entire game. So
no, that's true. Yeah, I'm glad to have it be something creative and not super generic. And yeah, it's kind of encompasses the whole feeling of this game. There's a little bit extra effort.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So.
If you wanna keep going there, I've talked enough.
I'll do a couple of them.
All right,
I'll give you a break. So the next one is the Cave of Wonders. This one it's tough but not terrible. You kind of go through the cave, looking for the lamp. It tells you to hit statues or destroy statues, which kind of again goes against the movie where you're not supposed to touch anything.
Yeah, right.
So you've got like the statue from the movie that Abu takes the jewel from, but then you've got this like kind of other one, this female one that throws, I don't know, like sapphires at you. And there's, a little bit of platforming, some more death pits that you didn't really have in earlier levels, and climbing stuff and bats. Yes.
This level is where I kind of started to realize one of the things I don't like about this game.
Okay.
And I'm curious on your thoughts. The hit detection on the sword is kind of weird.
It is. Yeah. I think it's limited to the physical sword and not just you swinging it, because you've got to be at the right distance and you can't be like over
right on top of it. Yeah. But then the statues in this level, you can't hit it, you can't kill it from afar. You have to get right on top of it, which is different than like the guards. And I don't know.
I did notice that as well, and I was a little annoyed because I couldn't figure it out like exactly. It just was like, well, sometimes I'm killing it and sometimes I'm just swinging my sword over and over.
Right.
So yeah, that's interesting. I'm not sure what's going on with that.
Yeah, so it didn't feel completely accurate. I don't know. It just every now and then I was like, I'm not sure what I'm swinging at. Sometimes things that I would think would work didn't, and then vice versa. Things I didn't think would work would hit it, and I was just like, that doesn't make any sense. But it's a small thing. It's not like a game breaking by any means, but every now and then I was just like, why am I not hitting this thing? And the statues were a prime example for some reason. So
yeah, I did like at the end of the level, separate from that, but the as you get to the very end, it has you jump across the little rocks in the lake or whatever,
right,
and then climb up the thing to the lamp, which is one of the most faithful things to the movie in this. I thought, which I thought was cool.
Mm-hmm.
Not 1-to-1 exact, like rather than going up a staircase up the thing, it's like there's some rocks that kind of stick out and go in, and but in general I thought it was pretty good.
There's also a boss in this level.
Is there? I've forgotten it already.
It's another statue, and it like teleports between two different
you're right,
bases. It's kind of weird.
Kind of a weird looking one, yeah.
Yeah.
Like based on the genie-ish, but not quite.
Yeah, he has like, he holds jewels in his hands, and then he has like a sword that comes out of his butt. I don't know why.
Yeah. It's like he's using his little genie tail as a hand or something.
Right. Yeah.
Like when Genie uses the microphone in the movie.
That's right.
Asks Aladdin his name. But other than that, yeah, it is really weird looking at first. Yeah, there's that little boss, and you just kind of go back and forth between the two things, and you hit him as soon as he spawns, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, not too hard.
No. Yeah, so then you get to the end, and you do climb up the ramp, you touch the lamp, and then does it transition to like a story thing? Remember,
yes, I think so.
It's like, I guess it's level complete, and then there's like a little mini cutscene.
Yeah, it shows that Boo, you have touched the forbidden treasure. You will now be whatever, and then it cuts back to the next level.
Right, and so the next one, the escape, is like we already talked about it. It's one continuous thing, no checkpoints, and like there's a lot of elements where you have to keep moving, where there's like a rock chasing you and it's insta kill. There's a lot of lava deaths, like if you don't time your jump, and then it could be like if you're about to make a jump and a rock falls and touches you, it kills your momentum. That happened to me so many times.
So stupid.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, and then probably bats.
If you're gonna have random rocks coming out of nowhere and hitting you, that's okay if it can hurt me, but don't make it slow me down mid-jump and have me fall. Like, come on. Like, let me flash. Like, take the hit. Oof, okay. But don't slow my jump down mid-air because I hit a rock that I couldn't see coming. It's just stupid. Don't make it a level where you're forced to run and hold down the right button the entire level, and then have boulders come hit you in the face that you have no time to dodge because your character is like all the way on the right side of the screen. It's just stupid. Yep,
and this goes back to what we were talking about, where games of this era were more about repetition and memorization than they were about fairness and skill. So
yeah,
I mean they required that for sure, but stuff like that.
There's so many blind
react.
Jumps where you're just jumping, and whatever's coming ahead of you hasn't even loaded yet.
Exactly.
And there's a couple cliffs you have to jump off where you're not really sure where the edge of the cliff is, and so sometimes
you just get as far to the edge as you can.
Right, sometimes I jump early, or I would not jump like quick enough, and I'd hit the jump button and I would just fall off. Oh my gosh. I hate this level. This is the worst level in the game.
It is awful.
I don't like it. So
but if you do get through it, which neither of us did, it does take you to the rug at the very end. You jump onto the rug, and that takes you into the next level.
Yep.
And that one we talked about, it's kind of like the turbo tunnel in Battletoads or other things like this, where you just sort of dodge stuff, go up or down, and not super complex. Like, there's not additional steps. It's really just up or down. You don't have to like go forward or backward or anything like some of the other games that use this mechanic, but definitely a little cheap when it shows you a question mark instead of a direction to avoid a rock.
Well, yeah, I agree. It is. This is still better than the Stampede level, in my opinion, though. Because eventually, the Stampede one, I think it does question marks too, and then like in some games, I wonder if in the higher difficulty, if the hands go away. I don't think no, because I'm watching a difficult mode right now, and the hands are still there. But I guess my point is, at least the hands don't, minus the question mark, they don't really go away.
Yeah.
They're pretty much there the whole time. Because some games, like in just Can't Wait to Be King level, when you're riding the ostrich, eventually the prompts go away, and you just have to like either memorize it or be really quick to react. But in this one, eventually you go so fast that there's like no time to react.
Yeah,
almost
it's muscle memory at that point.
Right.
And
yeah.
I assume it's hard coded, but I could see them doing it like random with the rocks, but I'm not sure.
I think it's the same every time.
Yeah.
I think
it'd be too brutal. I think otherwise. Yeah.
I don't know.
So
I was gonna beat this level, but then it freaking skipped me, and I was like, I was gonna stick with it till I got it, but
okay.
It didn't freaking let me. Last question about this level: what are those little things that are?
Dude, I don't know. They look like peanuts. Like I don't know.
I know. I like freeze framed it at one point, and I looked at them, and I'm like, what are those supposed to be?
Yeah. And do they do anything? Do they speed you up? Do they give you more hints? Maybe that's
I think they give you points. I think that's all they do.
They're so useless.
Yeah, and they and it's not like if you follow them, they take you the safe path.
Right.
They're just random. And
yeah.
I don't know. I just don't know what the heck they're supposed to be, and so it's cluttered to me.
Yeah.
But it's a good looking level.
Yeah, it is. It has that parallax thing I was talking about, and then the wave of lava comes up behind you slowly as you progress. One really funny thing I saw in the speedrun version I watched of this is the guy, because there's not really anything else to do, he just was moving Aladdin in time with the music, like really freakishly well, like a choreographed dance. It was. I'll send it to you. And maybe
send it to me.
Put it in the links or tweet it or something. But it was just funny and unexpected.
Huh? Yeah, I want to see that.
Okay. So after this, eventually you will survive, or it will skip for you, and you end up in that weird, surreal inside the lamp level.
Yay!
Which again could have totally just been in the Cave of Wonders. Didn't really need to be inside the lamp, but they decided that was what they should do. What I was talking about earlier with the visuals of this one is there's a lot of references to Friend Like Me, or even I think it's like the sun at the very end of the movie, like after the Whole New World reprise.
Right. The sun.
Right? The moon? Sun? Whatever.
Moons,
But Genie's face when he's like, made you look, or whatever, he starts laughing. They've got that in here. And then just a ton of floating hands, and like the floor sometimes is the genie's like tail, but you can sink through it like a cloud or something like that. Like it's a weird abstract level. There's the column A and column B from the musical.
Oh, dude, that's what that is.
Yeah.
That didn't even register in my head. Try some of column B.
Of column A. Try all of column B. Yeah.
I'm looking at it right now. I'm like, dude, I was like, what's with the alphabet thing? But you're right. That's totally what that is. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
There's a Sega Genesis in the background.
Oh, nice. I didn't see that.
With a TV. It's really random.
That's funny.
But yeah, first off, the like laughing sun or moon or whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
When I was playing this, I was like, it's super random, but I was like, that would make a really cool tattoo. Just like
interesting.
with like him laughing or whatever. I don't know. I just think it'd be a really cool tattoo. The way that you can kind of fall through the genie blue tail thing is really cool.
Yeah.
It feel like it almost is like you can feel it, even though you're obviously playing a video game. But I don't know. It's an interesting kind of. It's like quicksand, but you kind of navigate through it, but you also don't want to fall through it at certain points because then you die. So, I don't know. It's really cool. It's an interesting level. There's a bunch of hands. Toward the end, the hands kind of like get small and they get big, and I died quite a few times just like mistiming those. But so it definitely gets a little more precise with the platforming toward the end, but still actually a pretty fun level, all things considered.
It doesn't seem super unfair. The only part I got stuck on and I just kind of gave up was there's a part where you have to kind of jump between balloon heads of the genie.
Yeah.
And kind of catch them, and it's extremely precise and not very forgiving. So it does have, for the first like little bit of it, does have like kind of a safety floor of these little pillows underneath you, but those eventually go away, and then if you miss, you die. So that was actually where I stopped playing. I didn't actually play past that point.
Okay. Yeah, it's understandable. It is a little precise. I just remember my fingers hurting because I was like holding over and up just so like furiously to make sure I got through it, but
Yeah.
so I can understand why that would be frustrating. So
Yep. So, you want to take us home through these last 2 levels then?
yeah, I'd be happy to. So
Alrighty.
following that, you go to Sultan's Palace, which is basically, if you remember in the movie, the part where, I don't know, it's like these, like, it's at the palace, but there's, like, water. I think it's when, like, Iago pretends to be, was it Jasmine or something?
Oh,
He,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
changes
Right
his
before
voice.
they announce Prince
The
Ellie's in
flamingos.
menagerie. Yeah.
It's kind of like, it's basically that setting, but then they turned it into a whole level, more or less. And so you're jumping, trying not to fall in the water. There's flamingos you jump on. There's fish trying to shoot you. And, of course, the fish are wearing fez. Isn't that what they're
Of
called?
course.
Fez hats?
Yeah, I think that's what they are.
So there's so many animals in this game that just wear fezzes because Aladdin and Abu do, so why not everybody else should. There's a lot of riding the carpet in this level where you jump on him and he takes you to a new area. Really not a terribly difficult level, at least on my perspective. Having infinite health, I didn't really struggle with it, but who knows, I maybe would have died a bunch of times if I didn't have infinite health. So you work your way through the palace. Basically, you finally kind of get out of the water, and it's just your typical palace level. Then you find Abu, who's in a cage with a sword, and you like jump underneath of it, and it lets him out, which is kind of a cool little thing. And then he runs off. Yeah, and then I think that's the end of the level. I don't believe there was a boss in this one. And you move on to the next level. So it's pretty straightforward. Maybe... Yeah, there it is. Iago is at the end.
What's interesting is I did see, like, in the playthrough of this, there's multiple Iagos as sort of like drones.
Yeah.
Pluck their feathers to kill them.
Yeah, I love that effect. I meant to
it
mention
looks
that in the visuals where you can literally stand there and watch all these feathers, like, slowly like drop down and poof out and fall to the ground. But yeah, there's one point where I killed one, the feathers were still dropping, and then another Iago showed up, and I was just like, wait a minute.
A little weird there to use that instead of just like a random parrot, but
right.
It's cool to see him in there.
Yeah. And so the boss with him, he's like running on the treadmill machine that Jafar has, and basically you're throwing apples at him, basically. There's some places you can stand where the machine that shoots lightning, basically, if you just keep swinging your sword, you can pretty much get through the boss without even getting hit once. Which I noticed that's kind of a trend with a lot of these bosses. There's not a whole lot to them. A lot of them you can just throw apples from afar, and because I think even the final boss, you can't even do damage with the sword. It's only through apples, which is really weird.
Yeah.
And not great when you run out of apples, because then they provide you with more, but it's just, I don't know, it feels kind of broken at that point.
Yeah.
So after you beat Iago, you go to the final level, which is basically what happens when once Jafar gets the lamp, and so all of a sudden the castle looks evil. There's snakes everywhere, and one fun thing I forgot to mention in the Sultan's castle or palace or whatever, there's like the stacked toys that he plays with that are random throughout, and they even included the Beast in those stacked
just
toys.
like in the movie.
Yep.
That's awesome.
So I guess, I don't know, I think they're just really proud of their Easter eggs, and I don't know if like Virgin went to Disney and was like, hey, are there any Easter eggs we can put in this? We'd like to do that. And they're like, well, here's all the ones that we're doing, and like, feel free to use them. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm sure it was just the artist really being into it, but yeah, it'd be interesting to hear more about that.
Right.
I remember the Disney Adventures coverage of The Lion King went in depth with the Easter eggs, like talking about some of the lightning flashes in the shapes of Disney characters and things like that. So
nice.
Obviously Disney's press was aware of it and liked it, so I'm not sure if that was all intentional or just kind of a byproduct or what, but
right.
It's still really cool. And I always appreciate Easter eggs. They're so, I don't know, I feel like they're much less common these days because of production schedules, but
right. Yeah, I agree. So you make your way through Jafar's palace, which it now is basically a palette swap. Lots of spikes that you're jumping over and swinging metal balls. Your typical palace guards. There's some additional enemies or whatever. Navigating it's not too terribly difficult. They do throw a lot of enemies at you, so I could see it maybe being a little more difficult. Then toward the end, you jump on the carpet and you fly up, and then you eventually make it to the final boss, which is Jafar, obviously, because he is our main villain. He basically, I think, immediately turns into the snake. Or no. There is a first fight with Jafar where he uses his staff, and he basically it just like pulls you into him, and so you just got to keep throwing apples at him, and then eventually he does transform into the snake, which is like oddly small compared to the size he is in the movie.
Yeah.
But I understand that sometimes you have to do that kind of stuff. Probably to make him the size he was in the movie would be difficult. But he shoots fire at you, and like I said, you just keep jumping over the fire and throwing apples at him. If you're really stocked up on apples, you shouldn't have any issues. But when I played through it, for whatever reason, I think I had used all of them up on other things. So they keep giving you more, but it just kind of slowed down the process. So... but eventually you beat him, and the game is over, and you get a little cutscene at the end, really brief, where it shows like the night sky, and Jasmine and Aladdin are flying away on the carpet, and then it cuts to like a black screen, and they kiss, and then the credits roll over top of them, necking, I guess. So
yeah, boy,
it's a really long kiss. It goes for the whole duration of the credits. So
yeah, I think one of the most interesting things is David Perry, who I don't hear his name a lot in the game industry, but he is considered one of the early legends, I think.
Right.
Because like when you enter the cheat code, like it shows his face and says, "Oh, hi, Dave Perry," or something like that. But he was the lead designer and like the lead programmer and the lead animator, which is just crazy. Like, that is talent.
Mm-hmm.
So, I just
we owe it all to him.
Yeah, because I mean, he went on to make Earthworm Jim and a lot of popular stuff. So, and now he's just a consultant.
Poor guy. He should be making games still.
I agree.
R.I.P.
Yeah, and that's pretty much it. So I think with that, we'll quickly go through final thoughts. I don't know that they're super necessary this time because I think we've pretty much conveyed how we both feel about this game. I'll just really quickly. It's beautiful. It plays well. It is really hard. A little bit, sign of its age and time when it came out. Unfortunately, byproduct of that, the difficulty. But everything else about it, I love. It's full of charm. It's full of attention to detail, and has great sound, great music in general, and then just really fun to play. Don't have much more to say than that. I think that sums it up for me. How about yourself?
Yeah, definitely agree with everything you said. I guess the only thing worth mentioning is if you can look at the cheats and play this with invincibility on.
That's totally.
It's so much more fun that way. I don't think it's a disservice to the game at all to do that, because it really is a good game, and some of the later levels maybe not as strong, but still kind of it's fun to play it all the way through. With all the cheats on and stuff, it took me about an hour and a half, about as long as we've been sitting here talking about it. Yeah, I don't know. I just think it's a great game. Visually super good, and the music is just amazing. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know. It really is a great game. Not as hard as Lion King. So if you really were up to the challenge, you could totally beat this game. And have a good time still, I think, and not hate your life when you're done. But it would take some work. But overall, it's a great game. One of my favorite Disney games out there. I will say, looking forward to doing the Capcom one. I did fire it up last night after I finished this one, and I was a little worried because I actually liked what I saw. I was like, okay, this is different, but it's Capcom, so it's actually really good. And so I'm interested to play more and see see where it all plays out. But
Totally.
Regardless, not even thinking about that one or comparing against the console wars, this is a great game, and It's totally deserving of being one of the top selling games for the console. I think it totally deserves it. So
yeah, I would love to see some sort of re-release of this on modern hardware.
Or like because like the DuckTale treatment, maybe
that one would be that would actually be awesome.
Yeah, like a nice HD, up res would be pretty dope.
With actual cell animation that
right.
so much easier to scan now. Anyway, that'd be really cool.
That would.
But I think with that, we'll call this episode quits. Thank you, everybody, as always, for joining us. And go ahead and follow us on Twitter if you don't already at mouse_bytes. As always, you can find us on the nintendovillage.com. And from there, you can find links to all of our episodes, as well as other great shows, reviews, and other content. Our episodes are also found on the Nintendo Village YouTube channel. So if you'd like to see gameplay accompanying when you're listening to these episodes, check us out there as well. Or on any major podcasting services also. So
yes.
Thanks again, and as we mentioned already, our next episode will cover Aladdin for the Super Nintendo, which its own 25th anniversary is coming up in just 10 days. So with that, everybody have a great day, and beware of those caves of wonder.
Haha! Happy birthday, Aladdin!
Woo-hoo.
Bye!
Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe, check out some of our other videos, and visit thenintendovillage.com, your home for everything Nintendo.